Usually when regulators try to write rules for, like, a new technology, it feels a bit like watching someone try to nail jelly to a wall.
Oh, absolutely. You swing the hammer, but by the time you actually make contact, the jelly has, completely slipped away and changed its shape entirely.
Right, and that is precisely why this newly released 16-page draft guideline from the Reserve Bank of India, the RBI, is just so fascinating.
Because rather than chasing the technology with a bigger hammer, they looked at the frantic pace of innovation and essentially refused to play the game altogether.
Exactly. So welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, our mission is to explore how financial regulators are attempting to put real, enforceable guardrails around artificial intelligence for you, the consumer.
And we have some really incredible source material today.
We do. We are working off a highly revealing draft document issued for public comment by the RBI, alongside a brilliant piece of analysis by a writer named Naavi.
Which really helps break down the dense regulatory language.
Yeah, and what we are going to uncover today is that regulators are not doing this by chasing the latest tech jargon. They are doing it by fundamentally redefining how we look at automated decision-making.
It really is a masterclass in future-proofing the rules. I mean, we live in an era of absolute information overload, right?
Sure.
You're bombarded daily with new buzzwords. Generative AI, large language models, neural networks.
It's exhausting just trying to keep up.
Exactly. And if you try to regulate a specific piece of software today, the tech industry will just invent 3 entirely new ways to do the exact same thing tomorrow without technically triggering your new law.
No, true.
But what the RBI has drafted here is a framework that steps back and looks at the actual impact of the tool, stripping away whatever fancy name the marketing department slapped on it.
Okay, let's unpack this, because right now, everyone from Silicon Valley to Wall Street is tearing their hair out, arguing over what constitutes true AI.
Oh, it's a massive debate.
Right. You have developers fighting over technical definitions, you've got politicians holding grandstanding hearings about sentience, and massive corporations are just exploiting the ambiguity.
While the actual risks go unchecked.
Yes. Meanwhile, this draft document introduces a brilliantly simple loophole to sidestep that entire debate. They looked at the tech giants and basically said, we do not care what you call it.
Right. And to understand how they avoid that AI definition trap, we first have to look at the overarching framework they've established and what they actually decided to name this guideline.
Which makes the presentation of this document so surprising to me. You would think a guideline designed to rein in artificial intelligence would have AI stamped in giant, bold letters right on the front cover.
You would think so, yeah.
But no. The document is officially titled The Guidance on Regulatory Principles for Model Risk Management 2026. Or GRPMRM for short.
Very kitschy.
Right. And it applies broadly to all regulated entities, which we'll just call REs for short, meaning banks, financial institutions, and basically anyone operating under the RBI's purview.
And crucially, throughout the text, they deliberately label artificial intelligence simply as a technology.
Yeah, that really stuck out to me, just a technology.
That intentional downgrade is the pivot. They shift the entire regulatory spotlight away from the glittering, distracting concept of AI and place it firmly onto a much older, much broader concept, models.
And because they are regulating models, the hazards they are concerned about are termed model risks.
Exactly.
The source outlines the consequences of these risks, and it is a heavy list. They talk about inaccurate outcomes, flawed decisions, financial losses, operational disruptions, compliance failures.
It really covers everything.
It does. And broader adverse consequences for the REs, the consumers, and the entire financial system. And the document breaks this massive undertaking down into 6 distinct chapters.
Right. I have them here. Preliminary, governance, model risk management, model lifecycle management, specific models, and other provisions.
Yeah. And those consequences aren't just theoretical bullet points.
No, not at all. Think about the mechanics of how a model operates versus a human. If you have a human loan officer making a bad call, they might approve, one bad loan.
Right, it's a contained mistake.
Exactly. But if a model is broken, it doesn't just make one mistake. It makes that same mistake at scale.
Oh, wow, yeah.
A flawed assumption in an algorithm could systematically underprice risk for thousands of loans in a matter of seconds, silently creating massive financial losses and operational disruptions before anyone in the bank even realizes the math is wrong.
Which is terrifying when you think about how interconnected the financial system is for all of us. To stop that from happening, the RBI didn't just write a definition of model risk and walk away.
No, they created an entire cradle-to-grave regulatory life cycle for these tools.
And to me, it's like Regulators deciding not to write separate, highly specific laws for electric cars and gas cars and flying cars, but instead just creating one universal law for vehicles that can crash.
That is a great way to look at it.
But I have to push back a little here. By grouping advanced, unpredictable artificial intelligence in with absolutely everything else, don't we risk ignoring the unique, unpredictable dangers that AI specifically brings to the table?
What's fascinating here is the underlying philosophy of the why. Why take this approach? By focusing on the outcome, the crash, to use your analogy, rather than the technology or the engine, the RBI ensures that no matter what new tech is invented tomorrow, it's already regulated.
I see.
If an institution implements, like quantum AI or whatever the next big breakthrough is, if that tool causes financial loss or compliance failure, it automatically falls under the GRP MRM.
That makes a lot of sense. You are taking away the tech industry's favorite excuse, which is always, oh, but our tech is brand new, so those old rules don't apply to us.
Right, it forces accountability.
Yeah.
But since this entire regulatory framework hinges on that one word, model, instead of AI, we naturally have to ask how this 2026 guidance actually defines a model.
Because if the net isn't cast correctly, the whole structure falls apart. And the net they cast is massive. The RBI definition breaks a model down into three distinct, highly functional components.
So first, you have the input component.
Right. This is where the system incorporates data. But it's not just pulling in raw numbers. The text specifies that this component applies theoretical, empirical, or judgment-based assumptions.
So it's gathering the information and establishing the rules of the game based on how the institution views risk.
Then you have the processing component. This is where the system uses techniques to analyze and interpret relationships.
The guidance lists statistical, mathematical, economic, financial, or cognitive techniques. And the text explicitly notes that this includes AI and machine learning.
Yeah, that is the engine room. That is where the actual computation and the heavy lifting happens.
And finally, you have the output component. This is where the system produces results that are actually used for business operations and decision-making.
Now, wait. I want to highlight a vital caveat the RBI includes here. This three-part definition applies whether the system is developed entirely internally by the bank, sourced from a third-party vendor, or some combination of both.
That feels like a direct attack on a very common corporate loophole.
It absolutely is. A lot of institutions try to offshore their regulatory risk. They buy a complex tool from an external software vendor. And when something goes wrong, they throw up their hands and say, well, we didn't build the algorithm, so we aren't responsible for how it works.
Which is so frustrating for consumers.
Yes, but this guidance completely shuts that door. If you are serving the output to your customers, you own the risk of the model, regardless of whose programmers wrote the code.
That is a huge shift. But I have to admit, reading the list of what counts as a model in the source text genuinely surprised me.
Really? How so?
Well, the guidance says it includes algorithms, analytics, interfaces, applications, decision-based rules, and other computational tools.
It does say that, yeah.
That sounds incredibly generic. Am I missing something here? Interfaces and applications could describe literally any piece of software on my computer.
Yeah, I have the same thought. It does sound dangerously broad at first glance, but I think that broadness is entirely the point. The regulators are ignoring the packaging and looking strictly at the function.
Function over form.
Exactly. Think of it like a commercial kitchen. The raw ingredients you bring in, the meat, the vegetables, the spices, those are your inputs.
Okay, I follow.
The cooking techniques you apply, the baking, the frying, the searing, that is your processing component. And the final meal you put on a plate and serve to the customer sitting at the table, that is your output.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that maps perfectly to what the regulators are doing.
Right. Now, if that meal makes the customer sick, the restaurant is legally liable. It completely does not matter whether a highly trained human chef cooked it or if a fully automated robot arm flipped the burger.
The restaurant served the output, so the restaurant owns the risk.
Exactly. Taking your kitchen analogy a step further, the health inspector doesn't care if you call your cooking appliance a revolutionary thermal generator or just an oven.
Right.
If it prepares food for a customer, it gets inspected. That is what the regulators are doing here. The text provides a crucial qualifier. These tools count as models if they have a material impact on decision-making in business processes.
Material impact is the key phrase there.
And it applies irrespective of whether the regulated entity officially recognizes them as a model.
So a bank can't just point to an application and say, oh, that's just a back-end interface for sorting data. It's not a model.
Exactly. If that interface sorts the data in a way that materially impacts whether someone gets a loan or not, it requires governance. It strips away all plausible deniability.
If it impacts a business process, you must manage its life cycle, period.
Now, to really prove just how functional and wide-reaching this three-part definition is, the source text provides a highly specific everyday illustration.
And this is where we completely step away from the sci-fi ideas of AI.
Yeah, we are looking at something you probably have open on your computer right now.
The humble, everyday spreadsheet.
Yes, the guideline specifically provides the illustration of a spreadsheet-based loan pricing calculator deployed by a bank.
Okay, a spreadsheet.
Now, the text clarifies that if this spreadsheet is merely used as a basic mathematical tool, like a digital calculator just adding two numbers together, it is not a model.
Because a basic calculator doesn't apply judgment-based assumptions or complex processing. It just does arithmetic.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The text says that if this spreadsheet takes specific inputs, and it lists examples like borrower, type, tenor, credit score, collateral value.
Right, the data gathering part.
Yes, and then applies processing logic like interest rate grids, risk-weighted spreads, margin formulas, and finally produces an output, like a final lending rate or price, which then affects business decisions. It is officially a model under this guideline.
And that detail right there is an absolute earthquake for the financial sector.
It is massive. You might be listening to this thinking AI regulation is only going to affect tech giants in Silicon Valley running massive server farms.
But it's so much closer to home.
Exactly. If you are sitting at a desk at a regional bank, using a complex Excel sheet with a bunch of macros and formulas to derive customer margins, congratulations, you are operating a model under these new RBI guidelines.
It completely democratizes the regulatory risk. It forces these massive financial institutions to stop staring into the distant, theoretical future of AI and start looking in their own backyards.
They really have to.
They have to look at the mundane, everyday spreadsheets that have been silently running major financial decisions for decades without any formal oversight.
Imagine the sheer horror of a bank's compliance officer realizing this. I mean, how many massive financial decisions are made every single day based on an Excel spreadsheet that some guy named Dave in accounting built 8 years ago?
Oh, man, probably thousands.
Right. Dave doesn't even work there anymore, and nobody else in the department actually knows how the formulas work. They just plug numbers in and trust the output.
That happens more than any bank would ever want to admit on the record.
For sure.
And under this GRP-MRM framework, Dave's spreadsheet is now subject to the exact same rigorous governance, risk management, and lifecycle auditing as a cutting-edge machine learning algorithm.
Because the potential for an inaccurate outcome or a flawed decision that costs the bank millions is identical.
Treating a legacy spreadsheet and a complex neural network under the exact same risk framework reveals the ultimate philosophical shift of this guideline.
And our source text, written by Naavi, identifies this as a massive innovation.
It is a complete paradigm shift in regulatory thinking.
Naavi highlights this approach as a huge innovation, specifically because it entirely avoids the endless, pedantic debate over technical definitions.
Because trying to define AI technically is a losing game. As soon as you define it as deep learning, a new form of machine learning pops up that circumvents your definition entirely.
Instead of playing that game, the focus of this framework is entirely on the intention of the software. Specifically, it focuses on the intention of the software to bypass human intervention.
That is the crux of the entire document. Is the tool designed to make a decision so that a human doesn't have to?
And Naavi notes that this shift in focus is so significant that it may even impact the definition of AI in other regulatory frameworks outside of banking.
Oh, really? Like what?
The source specifically mentions that this could impact the DGPSI AI framework, which stands for the Data Governance and Protection Standard of India.
This is where the broader implications get really fascinating. The DGPSI AI framework wrestles with how to protect consumer data and privacy from being abused by artificial intelligence.
Which is a huge concern for everyone listening.
Yes. Historically, privacy regulators struggle with the exact same definitions as financial regulators. But if you define AI by its intention to bypass humans, it builds a bridge between financial rules and data privacy laws.
Meaning privacy laws no longer have to define machine learning versus deep learning either.
Exactly. The DGPSI AI can simply say, if a system uses consumer data to make an automated decision about that consumer, it falls under our privacy purview.
Wow, that is clean.
Right. It doesn't matter if it's an advanced neural net scraping data or a basic decision tree algorithm. If the intent is to bypass a human decision maker using consumer data, it triggers data governance standards.
This entirely harmonizes how different branches of the government handle automation.
It really does.
So what does this all mean for you navigating this increasingly automated world? Think about how much time, energy, and money is wasted in corporate boardrooms debating whether a newly purchased software tool is generative AI, or if it's machine learning, or if it's just a really smart algorithm.
So much wasted breath.
This RBI guidance cuts through all of that noise. It tells you that all that matters, the only thing that triggers the need for strict governance, is whether the tool is replacing a human decision.
This raises an important question regarding implementation, though. How will organizations fundamentally restructure their compliance teams to handle this?
That is going to be tough.
Historically, compliance teams audit code, they audit data security protocols, they check boxes on technical specs. But now they have to audit the intent of their software.
That is a wildly different mandate. You're asking compliance officers to do, like, philosophical auditing.
Essentially, yes.
You aren't just looking at the math, you're looking at the workflow. A compliance team has to look at a business process and ask, why did we deploy this tool in the first place? Was the intent to assist a human or replace one?
And if the answer is we deployed this spreadsheet to speed up loan approvals by calculating the rate automatically so the underwriter doesn't have to, then boom, you have a model.
And you need to govern it according to the full life cycle of the RBI guidelines. You need an executive owner, you need constant monitoring, and you need an audit trail.
It is a brilliant way to future-proof the law while simultaneously cleaning up the messy, unregulated tools that already exist inside these institutions.
Okay, let's bring this all together. We started this deep dive looking at a 16-page draft guideline from the RBI that seemed, on the surface, to be about putting guardrails around artificial intelligence.
But we quickly discovered it was actually a Trojan horse.
A Trojan horse for regulating all model risks. We broke down the anatomy of what actually constitutes a model, the inputs, gathering assumptions, the processing, applying logic, and the outputs driving business decisions.
Yep, the three core components.
And we learned that this net is cast so wide, it includes everything from an advanced neural network all the way down to Dave's macro-heavy Excel spreadsheet.
Because a flawed decision is a flawed decision regardless of the technology that made it.
And finally, we uncovered the real genius of this framework. The shift away from technical definitions and toward regulating the intention to bypass human intervention.
It doesn't matter if it's a supercomputer or a legacy calculator application. If it's making the choice instead of a person, it has to be managed.
And that profound focus on bypassing human intervention and decision-making leaves us with one final, very complicated reality to consider as we move toward an automated future.
Yeah, something for you to really think about after we wrap up today. If a model is defined by its intention to bypass human intervention, what happens when a regulated entity claims that a human is making the final choice, but that human is just blindly rubber stamping the spreadsheet's output every single time?
That is a scary thought.
At what point does a tool meant to merely advise a human secretly become the model making the decisions?